weekend, whenever you're listening, but when we're recording, it is 8 a.m. Central Time, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. You would not expect anything else. It is the Her Hoop Stats podcast. It is Friday, May 30th, and I am Jamie Steyer Johnson alongside Brittany Carper. And man, Brittany, we have some fun stuff I think to get into today, especially ahead of some exciting stuff going on in the W, as you pointed out when we were prepping for this episode. Commissioner's Cup starting this weekend, so a whole bunch of stuff to get into, and I'm excited to get rolling, but glad to get it done early in the morning. As we were talking about, you said, "Hey, thanks for coming in early." I said, "Hey, gotta get going. There's a whole lot to talk about." So, right off the top, the thing we were talking about a little bit was trying not to center, men's players, men's basketball in the context of women's basketball, but given some of my own inherent biases, as well as I think that it's a pretty cool story. But Sue Bird talked about Tyrese Halliburton reaching out to her for advice going into the playoffs, and for those who don't know, Tyrese went to Iowa State, was my brother's roommate for a while. Yep. Great guy, great family, and so I just thought that was really cool and sort of a sign of the way that a lot of men's players, especially, have really sort of embraced the fact that, hey, men's basketball, women's basketball, like, there's things I can learn from anyone, and really being open to a lot of different perspectives. And as we mentioned last week, you have a son who's really into women's basketball, and so I think it's a really cool sign of sort of the times changing and the perspectives and attitudes changing towards women's basketball.
Definitely. I think the growth of the W, and just really, like you said, the men in general, when they're growing up, little boys, how much the game has grown. I think a lot of it is the visibility of it. The access to actually sit and watch women's basketball now is more than it's ever ever has been. And the really cool thing is Tyrese is, an emerging NBA star and reaching out to arguably one of the best point guards, men or women, ever, for advice going into the playoffs as the face of the franchise for the Pacers is, like you said, how far it's gone. I think that's the really cool thing is, hey, what advice can you give me to help my team go win a championship? And I think just not even that perspective, but the growth that you see in terms of how many men go to, the W games now, the investment in franchises, and it's really, not even women's basketball. You're seeing it across women's sports as a whole. And that's just, I kind of stand on that soapbox a lot of just invest in women. And I think the return on that is growing exponentially, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, and this is in a week where the MLB announced their first investment ever in a women's league in I think some limited softball. And so you're seeing this all over. And we were talking a little bit before we started recording, like when I was growing up, I have a younger brother, and with my mom coaching women's basketball and with the support that Iowa State especially has, like, it was a long time before he realized, oh, this isn't like the default. Like, he grew up the biggest women's basketball fan and still is to this day, and, played basketball in college himself, but growing up, it was just like, well, I go to women's games and there's all these people here supporting. And so that's just what it is. It's not to get into like a whole, sociology lecture, but like it's learned. And so when you have it more accessible, as you say, like for people who maybe aren't in families that go to games all the time, but when you see it, when you're exposed to it, you're definitely going to be a lot more open to it. You're going to learn more about it without having to work as hard as women's basketball fans have had to historically to stay involved. So it's a really cool kind of, I like that story, obviously, specifically, but also it's certainly a really nice sign of sort of the times evolving, the times changing.
Yeah, I think another thing is a lot of women's games and programs, if you attend one of the games, you're going to find it really family friendly. And so you can hook little kids, whether it's boys or girls, instantly because you have that connection. I think the players, obviously in this generation, continue to give back. You're more visible on social media
Hmm.
platforms, so you're able to create those connections with players a lot better than you ever have been. And so even if you're not having face to face conversations with them, you see so much about them that you feel like you know them a little bit more. And I think that investment, because you know the personalities, you have a little bit more ability to be like, oh, I really like that team or player because I see more of
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's I feel like if we have time between like the end of W season and the start of NCAA season, I feel like we could do like a whole episode on that because we've both seen that from sort of the college side as well. But absolutely, I think that the personalities are so compelling, the storylines are so compelling, and that kind of leads us into our other big topic for the day, which is the Commissioner's Cup starting this weekend, which is
them.
kind
Yeah.
of crazy because you pointed that out, and I was looking at the schedule. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, it definitely does because they adjusted the format where
Hmm.
everything is within this 2.5 week span. So instead of this is the Commissioner's Cup game for the first like 2 months of the season, it's
Hmm.
every game from June 1st to June 17th is a part of the Commissioner's Cup, which I definitely do appreciate making it a little bit more compact, to make it a little bit more easy to understand, easy to follow. And I think that the stakes will feel really high because day after day, this is all impacting the standings. It's not just sort of jumping out randomly here and there. It makes the schedule a little bit funky just because you're only going to be playing those conference opponents for those 2 weeks.
Hmm.
But the schedule's already funky. Like you already have people playing back
Back
to
to
backs
backs.
against the
Yep.
same team frequently. So, with the amount of teams in the league, it's like, all right, that's just kind of something that you deal with. But I am so excited to see this kick off. There's obviously been some great matchups already this season, and so we're going to continue to see even more of that. But as we were saying in the beginning before we started recording, it it definitely feels at this moment like uh we could very well be heading towards a rematch.
Right. I would be shocked if it's not a rematch, but there are some teams certainly that we're kind of figuring some things out, so could make it interesting. But right now we're, on a path of the Lynx and Liberty rematch, and some interesting games. I think to start, like one that I on Sunday for me at least, the Aces Storm should
Mhm.
should be a good game to kick that off because I think the Storm are definitely playing better. The Aces, like we've seen and have been talked about, have some holes and they need to figure some things out, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So that one, just to kick it off, I think was the big one that kind of caught my eye.
Yeah, I think that for me, I'm a lot more intrigued with the Western Conference. Like I think that
Hmm.
the Liberty, especially given what we saw from the Fever and what they are kind of dealing with Caitlin being out, and that'll be for at least the first half of
Hmm.
Commissioner's Cup games. I don't know that they're going to put it together well enough to really challenge there. But then you look at, okay, you have the Lynx, but they're going to be competing against Mercury, Storm, Aces. Like
Hmm.
those are some teams that really have the ability to put it together where you end up in this situation where, okay, is any one of these teams going to be able to put together the run, and then can other teams maybe give them a little bit of a hand as well,
Hmm.
where okay, if someone knocks off a team that is a little bit unexpected and all of a sudden you get a little bit more of that clearance, where maybe you have a team that has 2 or 3 losses in Commissioner's Cup games going into that championship. That's where I think things get really interesting, where okay, the second, third, fourth teams in the conference could be really helping decide it.
Yeah, because sure, some of them can beat the Lynx, but then they also have to play each other, where
Mhm.
you're gonna have to find in that 2 to 4 range kind of which team can put it together over that, 2.5 week stretch to maybe outlast the Lynx. Because, I don't see the Lynx going 3-3 or whatever. I don't see that happening. So those 2 through 4 teams that we think can kind of challenge them, that'll be the key. Can they find a way to come out ahead from, separate themselves from that pack?
Yeah, I think that's really the big question, and obviously, like we said, from what we've seen so far, it looks pretty solid for a rematch. But the other part of things here is that okay, now you get this span of time where you kind of cut the league in half, and so for a league that's already very small, and we've heard a lot of coaches talk about okay, well we're getting to this point where it's not going to be anything really new. I know that Coach Williams talked about it yesterday with Chelsea. Like, you get to this point in the season where you're not going to have a whole lot of new film, new opponents. Like, you're kind of going to see what people are up to. And so it's about how well you can adjust to that, how well you can sort of counter what you know other teams are trying to do. And so all of a sudden, when for 16 days, fairly near the start of the season, you only have to worry about like, you know, 5 or 6
5, yeah.
opponents. And so that really makes it almost simpler for your game planning, where you might get some self scout days, which are so
Mhm.
rare to come by once the season actually starts, where, okay, we're seeing this team who just played the same teams for 3 straight games that we have. And so we've already seen a lot of what they want to do, but then you have teams like the Chicago Sky who looked much much better than we've seen last
Mhm.
night. Really looked like okay, some of the things that we know these players are capable of, they put together in a
Mhm.
game and were able to finish it out in a tight one, which
Mhm.
has kind of been tough to come by for them this year. And that's where you say, okay, maybe you're not going to be playing for the Commissioner's Cup, but this is a really good opportunity to figure out a lot about yourself as a team before putting on a push towards the all-star break afterwards.
Mhm. Yeah, great stepping stones for a lot of those. I think, like you said, the Sky looked much better. I think they're figuring out, Camila Cardoso's playing the best she has in the
Oh my
W.
gosh, just
Yeah,
dominant to start especially.
yeah, 3 straight games in double figures. I mean, last night, I thought the big thing with her and even Angel Reese was their ability to pass the ball, last night, which I don't think up until that game I really felt was a big strength from them, but, the understanding of where the ball needed to go, you really gotta see kind of how they're evolving together, because I think that's a really big key for them. With neither one of them ability to stretch the floor, you're seeing them find ways to still impact the game, moving the ball. We also have to give our flowers to Courtney Vandersloot becoming the all-time
Yes.
scorer in Chicago Sky history, passing her wife Allie Quigley. So that was a really cool moment. But I think she's just provided such steady leadership for them. Um, Understanding that they are young, that they are rookies. She talked about post game playing more through Cardoso. I also read yesterday she had a quote about, understanding kind of the pressure that Angel Reese is under and giving her some grace and
Hmm.
understanding that hey, she's going to have good days and bad days, but we're here with her. We have her back. And I thought that was just really important because sometimes that's not talked about enough. I think with professional players is not only are they trying to be really good for us as fans, but for themselves. And so that to me I thought was a really cool thing. And so the Sky is definitely a team I think that can use this 2.5 weeks to really spring forward.
Yeah, I saw the same quote from Sloot, and I think it was reposted on my timeline from Cheryl Swoops, and it was just like, yeah, it's just something that, like you said, like it's not talked about enough, it's not understood enough. There's a lot of people that I think follow women's basketball as fans, and as we talked about, there's this tremendous level of of access. And so there's this feeling that like, wow, I really know these people. I really understand them. And that is great for connection, but also you need to be able to like recognize the degree to which that's true and the degree that it's not true. Like
Mhm.
you and I have both seen the flip side of it, like knowing teams, coaches very personally and realize like, okay, as a fan, you might think that this impacts every aspect of your life, but at the end of the day, like you can turn the TV off. Like you can turn your notifications off. You can step away. For these players, for these coaches, like this is their livelihood. This is their living. They don't have that option. And so for the people who treat it like a reality show, the people that treat it like it is solely entertainment without like an actual person on the other side, these aren't actors playing the part of an athlete. And so you caught one of my soapboxes, but
Yeah, no, you're good.
it's so important to recognize that like this is extremely impactful to like the breadth of someone's life. And so I think that it's incredible to have a veteran like Sloot there to really help guide the young players, and to be, as you said, just so understanding of what they're facing and be empathetic and like, yeah, she can't even relate to like every aspect of what they're
Mhm.
dealing with. You know, she's a white woman, she's not from overseas like Camilla. I mean, I can't even imagine how difficult it must be on hard days for Camilla being so far from home. And so but
Mhm.
to have teammates that get it and to have teammates that like want to be there for you and want to support you even if they don't know exactly what you're going through, to understand, well, you're going through something. Like this is difficult. That is, it's so important for your mental health, which affects your physical health and it affects the way you play. And I feel like we're starting to see that where the Sky haven't looked like super frustrated. They haven't, like, their body language has still been pretty good. And that's where I also think Courtney was talking about like, you know, we really wanted to win, but we wanted to make winning plays. Like we wanted to win for each other so badly, and that has been extremely evident. There's a lot of teams where, as she said, you lose 4 games and people kind of check out, and that has not seemed to be the case. And now we're seeing these aspects of people's games really jump out that maybe you didn't really realize were there. Like when I saw Camilla, or excuse me, when I saw Angel in Unrivaled this summer, that was the thing that really jumped out to me both when I watched online, but when I was there in person, like her passing, her vision was tremendous. And that's a thing that I think people might need to reframe a little bit, where you have this focus on scoring, 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 scoring. Well, yeah, you want to score, but maybe your scoring and finishing isn't like the very best it could be yet. So then, if you recognize what a good shot is for you and you take the good shots, maybe you don't force up as many of the shots that are going to be harder to make. If you take fewer shots, you shoot like 50% from the field, but if you can get all those rebounds and you can get a couple assists off of it because you've got Camilla coming in, because you have good shooters on the perimeter, like that I feel is sort of the sweet spot right now, specifically for Angel Reese and for the Sky as a whole, where recognizing she is such an incredible tool as like a distributor, as a person to set up plays for
Mhm.
everyone else. Because then you also have Courtney Vandersloot, who's incredible at it, right? And so all of a
Yeah.
sudden you realize, wait, we can move things like their last play. I mean,
Mhm.
inside, outside, around the horn, like you literally could not have had it go better. And I saw someone online point out a great point, which was if you rewatch that play, that was a bucket guaranteed 100% no matter what, because both Angel and Camilla had the best inside position you could possibly have. They had an offensive rebound. If that shot missed, they were getting that rebound. And so that's just where you see, okay, yeah, this is a new group, this is a new head coach, but the development's coming along. And especially for the era we're in basketball, where it's like all about the point forward, hey, Angel's got some of that. Got a lot of that to her for
Yeah,
sure.
she does, and I think you touched on it when maybe not forcing the ball up at the rim. She made 2 plays last night in that game, she had a pass at the rim and she could have forced it up, but instead she made that drift pass, especially on that last play. Everybody touched the ball. The wings were scrambling. Adkins makes that ball fake. She has a wide open shot, but I think you're seeing that level of, hey, I don't have to force this shot up. I'm going to trust that if I make this next pass, either my teammate's going to get a shot or she's going to make the extra pass, and then we're going to get a basket. And so you can make a lot of winning plays in basketball. It doesn't have to be the shot that goes in. And that's, I think I saw Tyler Marsh touch on that too after the game. Just, hey, Angel affects the game in a lot of ways besides her scoring. And that to me just shows they understand her value. And like you said, we as fans need to kind of understand that more too. I think ones who watch it and understand the game get that. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of people out there that don't. And she gets a lot of criticism, but we also have to remember like her and Cardoso are winners. So when Sloot touched on they're not getting down about that, they're both from extremely successful programs. And so in the college game. So when they get to the W, they're not out there to lose. They want to find ways to win and impact the game. And to me, they're really two great cornerstones for that because they're going to understand what to do in those moments to help their team win.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, looking at some of the games tonight, as we said, we're recording Friday morning. We've got a couple more games to get through before we start Commissioner's Cup, which it's sort of funny where you look and you're like, oh, I guess this is why we have some of those like very nearly back-to-back sort of matchups. Like tonight,
Mm-hmm.
the Lynx play the Mercury for the first time, and then they'll be playing again here pretty shortly in Commissioner's Cup next week on Tuesday. But anything you're really looking for from these teams to be able to maybe have one last sort of dress rehearsal before you're getting into some of the more consequential games of the regular season?
For sure, the Fever, I think, kind of see what they look like again without Clark. I I think the expectation was they wouldn't look great. I mean, because you're trying to figure out she's such a ball dominant guard,
Hmm.
and really pushes the pace for them. So to see kind of what changes they make, I think the Liberty at the Mystics, that'll be a really interesting game. The Mystics again are just I love what they're doing
So
there.
scrappy.
Yeah, so scrappy. They're rookies, just understand. They're fit. They're playing. It's a fun game to watch. And the Liberty of Jones, I think she's still questionable. If she's out, that'll put them in a little bit of a challenging position. But then the Lynx Mercury, I think, is another really. I mean, Dream Storm. I think there's a lot of good matchups tonight that kind of seeing where teams are at before you're going, and to compete for $500,000. And, when money's on the line, I think you're going to see a lot of teams really play. But tonight, there's a ton of good matchups.
Yeah, I think that it's going to get the weekend started off really well. We've got just the one game on Saturday because of the fact that we're heading into Commissioner's
Hmm.
Cup. So a Sky Wings rematch on Saturday because why not? It's the W.
Yeah.
We love rematches
Yeah.
immediately.
And,
So
and so that will be interesting though, because the Wings had that little stretch in the third quarter where Arike was doing Arike things. And
mhm.
I joke she gets like that NBA jam when the ball turns to fire. That's how
Yes.
she plays when she's in that zone. And then she went out, obviously was at a stretch where she needed a break. And then the Sky kind of took that momentum back and you saw the back and forth. But I thought down the stretch, what really, so this will be an adjustment I'm looking forward to, is they put McCowan in the pick and roll. And
Mhm.
then the Sky just kind of had whatever they wanted. And so it was interesting to me, I know the size of McCown was for Cardoso, but could Melissa Smith given a little bit more there, give her a little bit breather to kind of see if it changed it up. That
Mhm.
to me was interesting. And I think as a rookie head coach, you're probably going back and evaluating that. I mean, certainly I would. So that to me is going to be interesting to see that adjustment, from the Wings perspective, because I thought that's really what killed them down the stretch in the fourth quarter was the Sky just went into a pick and roll almost every time, and or they got out and ran, and you saw their defensive assignments just weren't there. So to me, that'll be really interesting to see kind of the adjustments that they make.
Absolutely. Certainly a whole lot to follow here over the weekend and then heading into the next couple weeks of the Commissioner's Cup. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for joining me early in the morning. As always, you can be found online at Brittany Carper, BrittanyCarper. Guys, I am Jamie Steyer Johnson at JStyes, JSTEYZ. And I'm going to do my quick, like, around the horn, use my 30 seconds kind of plug. If you're watching
I like it.
online, you see my shirt Bouquet, friend of mine from high school. I'm going to keep promoting my emo music agenda. Feeling Color EP out last week on all streaming platforms. It's awesome. Take a listen. Watch your local WNBA team. And we will talk to y'all next week. Thank you. This is the Her Hoop Stats podcast.